think the majority medium. I know, you did get to not on the list. No. You brought those Chinese influence. Hello, Pepita. Thank you, Linda.
Call the meeting to order, please. Okay, can you all stand for Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. Pastor Todd Forrest, and you are from Fountain Hills Christian Center. Thank you for coming.
Shall we pray? Lord, this is a great time of year to come to you, and we thank you so much for the privilege of living in this community that you have entrusted to this leadership. And I pray for the proceedings this evening and all of the things that are decided, that you would just continue to keep your hand on our community. Lord, it is still in you we trust, and we ask your blessings on the proceedings this evening and all those that live in our neighborhood. We pray this in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Councilmember Yates?
Present.
Councilmember Dickey? Vice Mayor Leger? Councilmember Elke?
Here.
Councilmember Hanson? Councilmember Brown?
Here. April 4th.
Part of my mayor's report, I want to acknowledge and thank all the residents who contacted me over the weekend. Some by email, some by phone, some just stopping me in the grocery store, concerned about our town and our schools in light of the tragedy in Seatown, Connecticut. I'm sure I speak for all our council when I say that our thoughts and prayers go out to the families of those victims, families whose lives will never be the same. I'm sure all of us hugged our kids a little tighter and thought about the important things in our lives, family, friends, and our community. It's so sad to think that now when we go to a mall or a movie or any event, there's always going to be that little apprehension, that extra glance over our shoulders, and where even safe environments like our schools are so vulnerable. And we just want to assure everyone in our community that your town government and your schools, along with MCSO and the fire department, are doing everything in our power to keep this community safe. Thank you. And we have no public chances, but we will go right to call to the public. No speakers. Okay. All right, on our consent agenda, I just want to inform you that at the request of Councilwoman Dickey, number 2 is moved off the consent agenda and it will be on the regular agenda. So I will just read the other consent agenda items. Number 1, consideration of approving the town council meeting minutes from December 6, 2012. Number 3, consideration of approving resolution 2012-21, accepting a license agreement with Eagles Nest Community Association Incorporated. Number 4, consideration of approving the delay of the contract termination with Area Agency on Aging for home delivered meals until January 2nd, 2013. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed?
So moved.
And a second, please? Any speaker cards on the consent agenda?
No, Mayor.
All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Yates?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson?
Aye.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Lejay?
Aye.
Councilmember Elke? Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Mayor 7-0.
We will put the number 2 item first on our regular agenda, consideration of approving a contract with Netian Technology Group in the amount of $27,629.61 for a video surveillance system upgrade and integration between Town Hall, Community Center, Golden Eagle Park, and Four Peaks Park. Ken?
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, I'd like to ask the deputy town manager to come and give a report regarding this request for expenditure in the capital improvement program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Part of this year's budget included an expenditure for to enhance our existing cameras at the community center. Originally, the intent was to upgrade the camera system to cover the areas outside of the community center where the art is around the event circle. There are currently 11 cameras inside the community center, but they're all focused on the inside. Again, the goal with the system was to upgrade the recorder to a central monitoring and recording system, integrating all the cameras at the community center as well as town hall and the parks. The parks do have security cameras, but they're not connected to a central monitoring system. And for example, when we had the vandalism at the Four Peaks Park, the cameras and the recording equipment were one piece of equipment, so as soon as those cables were cut, there was no recording, no cameras or anything. So they weren't integrated with anything. So we thought that if we were going through this process, we would take the opportunity to create a system, a monitoring system that would all be centralized and go to one computer. So even if there was tampering, we still have video recording. And that would, the responsibility for that would be the IT department. The proposal includes 20 cameras that will be placed at Golden Eagle Park and Four Peaks Park, as well as the community center to cover the event circle and the parking lot, and town hall to integrate those, and that's it. The equipment is being purchased through a cooperative agreement with Mojave Educational Services Cooperative. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions. Mark Mayer is here to answer questions on the parks, and Mike is in the back and would be happy to come up and talk about the technical part of it.
Okay, thanks, Julie. I'll just go to Councilman Dickey, and she asked for this to be discussed.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Julie. I wanted to discuss it because it's, almost a $28,000 expenditure, and also just to show that we are protecting our assets. And I just was wondering if you had, I think I spoke to someone and asked if would you have a way of letting us know maybe the amount of the assets that we're trying to protect with these. And in addition, it's also a security measure, and as the mayor just painfully reminded us, hopefully it'll be something that will be of assistance to public safety as well.
Mayor, Councilmember Dickey, it's obviously can't cover every single thing that we own. We just don't have enough of a system to do that, but it's designed to include the majority of the community center, which is a pretty open building. People can just walk in, and there is art there on display every month. In addition, there is the parking lot, which presently we don't have any cameras on the parking lot, so if there was anything there, people can be assured that there's cameras there, as well as the event circle that has a lot of art around it. And that was really the primary purpose, is to protect that art because it's all in one spot. So with this system, this is probably, a good start for it. But again, we've got equipment at the parks, the restroom control buildings and all of that. We recently had the restroom control building at the Golden Eagle Park broken into, and they stole the gators, or the one of the gators. And so again, the equipment was there, but it didn't function properly, so we just need to get a system that we can depend on.
Anyone else? Councilman Elsie?
George, can you specify how the funds are being spent on this? I know we have $20,000 that was allocated already for this particular project, or a project like this from the what's for this budget from the fund, and then we have another $7,000. And then the second would be, is this a system, do you know, and maybe it's more for Mike, that we can add additional cameras without having to buy, a whole new system?
I'm going to try and speak for Mike, and if I'm wrong, he'll come up and correct me, but I know the biggest part of the expense of this is not the cameras, it's the servers that are required to integrate everything. And this proposal includes, I believe, 3 servers, which is the most expensive part, so I'm going to have to assume that then we can add to it. Mike is pretty good about making sure that we look to the big picture and expand, so I'm going to say yes, but if I'm wrong, he'll come out and correct me.
Julie, are any plans to put cameras that does just the park?
Mayor, I would check with Mark on that. Call it Mark Mayor of Parks and Rec.
Mayor Kavanaugh, that is one of the things we are looking at potentially for this year in the budget, specifically focusing on the restroom and the control buildings as well as the skate park itself.
Okay, because I know we had some incidents there with the dogs off leash. Would we be able to see any of the fields or anything like that, or just closely by the building?
Possibly. The difficulty again becomes placement of the cameras and how many cameras you can actually place there. Our focus so far has largely been on trying to curb vandalism and prevent vandalism. We haven't really focused on, for instance, we used to have similar issues over at Golden Eagle Park. We really haven't put cameras on the ball fields to control dogs off leash to try to prosecute somebody. That's something that typically we've used the county for, and not cameras, because the cameras are, as you noticed, fairly expensive.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Councilwoman Hans.
I think it's important, too, to reiterate that in the staff report, it did say over the last 5 years there have been 59 incidents of vandalism. So we're almost looking at monthly occurrences that hopefully will be curbed.
All right. Anything else? Okay, then,
Mayor, I think we need a motion then on this.
yes, I'm getting right to the motion.
Okay.
Have a motion, anyone want to make a motion?
Sure.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, make a motion to approve this particular consent agenda item for the contract between Town of Fountain Hills and NetSeam Technologies Group through the cooperative purchasing agreement identified with Mojave Educational Services Cooperative.
I'll second.
Any speakers first on this item?
No.
Okay, then, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
There's 7-0.
All right. Okay, we'll go on to the next item, which is appointing 3 citizens to serve on the Senior Services Advisory Commission for 2-year terms beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending December 31st, 2014, and appointing 1 citizen to serve the remainder of a term beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending December 31st, 2013. And I think I see some of the people here. Gloria. I move to appoint Nancy Blumenstein, Gerald Colbert, and Jim Judge to serve on the Senior Services Advisory Commission, each to serve a 2-year term beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending December 31st, 2014, and appointing Gloria Coleman to serve the remainder of the term beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending December 31st, 2013. Okay, and should I have a motion to accept? Second. Speaker card?
No, Mayor.
All right, any discussion on the council, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
All right, congratulations, and thank you for volunteering. Thank you. And number 6, get to appoint some more citizens. This is great. This is to serve on the Community Center Advisory Commission for a 2-year term, beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending December 31st, 2014. I move to appoint Alice Brovan, Pat Canning, Jerry Gurrell, and Donna Yorty to serve on the Community Center Advisory Commission, each to serve a 2-year term beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending December 31st, 2014. Can I have a second?
So moved.
Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right, any council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
Great. Congratulations to all 4 of those residents, and thank you very much for volunteering your services. And number 7 is consideration of appointing 3 citizens to serve on the Parks and Recreation Commission for 2 2-year terms beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending December 31st, 2014, and appointing 1 youth commissioner for a 1-year term beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending January 31st, 2013. I move to appoint Sharon Bennett, Don Jody, and Janice Tancredi to serve on the Parks and Recreation Committee, each to serve a 2-year term beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending December 31st, 2014, and appointing Madeline Bloomquist as the Youth Commissioner to serve a 1-year term beginning January 1st, 2013, and ending December 31st, 2013. May I have a second?
Second.
Any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Okay, council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
Okay, congratulations, and special congratulations to Madeline for volunteering to be our youth commissioner. She's also the Mayor's Youth Council, and she's very active in the school, and she's going to be a great addition to the commission. All right, we'll go on to number 8, consideration of accepting and approving the placement of a donated bronze sculpture titled Digging In and placing the piece in the community center lobby. Okay?
I'd like to ask the Community Services Director to come and give a report regarding this piece of art. Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council. This is a donated piece that's coming from the Public Art Committee. It has been completed by Ed Mell, who's considered an outstanding Western artist. The piece itself is valued at $12,000. It is a smaller piece, which will require that it be placed on a pedestal. The Public Art Committee has also agreed to pay for the cost of that pedestal. The location, as you can see, is looking out the windows towards both the library to the right and then to the left, the Centennial Circle. I did bring this particular item forward at the Community Center's Advisory Commission meeting last Monday, and they were supportive of the request unanimously. Joining me this evening also are Mr. Miles and Ms. Thompson from the Public Art Committee, in case there are questions that I cannot answer. With that, I would be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from council on this? Okay. Do we have any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Can I get a motion from someone to accept this?
Mayor, I move to accept the art piece as proposed.
And Councilman Hanson seconds. And any speaker cards? Any other council discussion? Nope. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
Okay. Consideration of accepting and approving the placement of a donated clock along the Avenue of the Fountains. Mark?
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council. This particular piece is a little unusual. I'm usually standing up here talking about public art, so this is a little bit of a change. The process was very much the same. The Public Art Committee came forward and proposed to the town that they would provide the clock that you see in front of you. They had some specific locations which we took a look at and basically focused on this particular location for a couple of reasons. This is, as you can see, across from the All-American Grill at the far end of Avenue of the Fountains. First of all, because of the visibility, we felt like this was an ideal location. There were several others that we looked at. As you can also see at the bottom of the second picture there, just to the left is ready access to electrical power, which was a major consideration. And then the other thing we looked at was that, last but not least certainly, as the Avenue of the Fountains gets redone, this is an area that currently is not contemplated for any disturbance in this particular area. So we felt like that was an important consideration as well. And this is also because of the proximity to the electrical, the least expensive option for the town. The cost of the clock is $6,000. As I understand, the Public Art Committee has paid for the first $3,000 and is in the process of being reimbursed for that $3,000 and is going through a fundraising campaign for the remainder of that $3,000. But they are in a position to donate the clock to us. The only expense that the town would have is the electrical, which we estimate at $1,000. With that, I guess I would stand for any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Yates?
Mr. Mayor, in the event that the medium project does go forward and there is some extension, could you elaborate on the possibilities of moving this without damage and then putting it back?
Yes, as I understand it's relatively, we would pour a concrete base and stub out an electrical underneath, so it would be relatively easy to pull it off. I should also mention, joining us this evening is Marty Brown, also from the Public Art Committee. He, as he told me this evening, has been working on this project behind the scenes for a number of years, and he informed me that they are seeking, and maybe perhaps have already gotten commitments from a group, that their name would appear in the center of the clock, and then the town of Fountain Hills would be on the top as their major donor. The piece is, I understand, aluminum, so it also will have the ability to be programmed without having to actually go into the clock to adjust the time. So those are a couple of features that I wasn't aware of.
And Councilman Brown, did you want to add something?
I did. Thank you, Mayor. Mark, we've talked about for years redoing the intersection of the Avenue and Saguaro. Was this taken into consideration? I guess if it's easily moved, no big expense.
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Brown, the only expense, it really depends on the electrical. Moving it and pouring a pad, as you know, is relatively inexpensive, depending on the distance of the run electrically. But typically, as you know, most intersections have electrical with fairly close access. So I wouldn't anticipate that there'd be a major problem there.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. Given that we're having a work study session about the intersection on January 8th, and the way the motion is written, if I was to make the motion that way, would that allow us some flexibility on the placement of the clock after we have the work study session? Because we may hear or find out something that we can't anticipate right now about during those discussions. And basically the motion is located along Avenue of the Fountains. This way we can very gratefully accept the piece, but maybe just slightly postpone a definite placement of it until we have that work study. If that would be okay, I'll make that motion and see what you think. Which is, I make a motion to accept and approve acceptance of a donated clock to be located along Avenue of the Fountains.
All right, I have a motion. So I have a
Second.
And discussion. Councilman Elsie?
Mark, do you know if the placement of the clock has any bearing or impact on those that are donating it? And I heard something behind you.
Well, I know we did have some discussion. There were a couple of different areas that were proposed, and we did finally have a discussion with both the representatives that are here this evening, Mr. Miles and Ms. Thompson, and they were agreeable at the time. They may wish to add something else to that.
Anyone else?
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Woodgate?
First of all, thank you for once again stepping up and providing us another asset, a little different than a piece of art. So Thank you so much for doing that. And, along the lines of what Councilwoman Dickey stated, I'm all in favor of accepting. And I think that we should perhaps, rather than determining the placement this evening, create some flexibility for a variety of reasons. We're looking at the possibility of construction in that area, first and foremost. We're not sure how the median project's going to be going. We're going to be talking about that later on. And there may be a different placement that might make as much sense as what's targeted currently. If we do move forward with the median project, and we'll be discussing that later this evening, we're going to be looking at a concept design, and I think it would be awesome if we go in that direction to have the designers be able to look at this clock and get their input on where they would think the best placement would be, and it may very well be what's targeted. So I'm kind of in agreement with Councilwoman Dickey for a slightly different reason. Thank you, Mayor.
Mark, we're actually planning on putting it in now, or I know there was some talk about storing it. Is it actually going to go in now?
It's my understanding that as soon as they have the financing in place, which I believe they do, they were planning on purchasing the piece, yes.
Okay. But then it could be, Mr. Miles, did you want to come up and say something? Come up and chat.
First of all, I think it's important that you understand that this clock is coming to us through the generosity of our local Rotary clubs. The Public Art Committee found it. We liked it. We've talked to a number of people about location. We'd like to see it put in place as soon as possible, but literally the removal of 4 bolts and the unplugging of an electric line, it can be moved anywhere. I don't know how soon the avenue realignment is going to be taking place. I don't think it's going to be next month, but this clock could be in place next month. So I would hope that you would accept the clock now, let us put it up so people can enjoy it. And there are other locations as the time goes through that might be equally attractive, but this would be, we hope, the first, maybe the second. The digging in may not come until next month, but it'll be the first 1 or 2 pieces we have in 2013, which gives us something to shoot for.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Would you like to amend your motion that we could accept the clock and it could be placed where it is with the option of, if it's necessary to move it, that we would have the option to move it?
Maybe suggest a motion as written is what I said, so I think if somebody wants to amend, because I'm not sure
You've
why
got
it's
it,
written this
move
way,
it in
but
where you want.
I gave it as written, so if somebody wants to amend that, that's fine with me. Again, we're talking January 8th of the work study session, specifically talking about the intersection, so I don't know if it'll be done before January 8th, but it's up to the council.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, so, well, we have,
I think the motion as given does give us the option of installing it where it's being proposed and then moving it somewhere else along the avenue. So I think we have that discretion.
Andrew, do we need any other language in that to move it, because it just says accepting and approving? Can we move it then without?
Madam Mayor, the motion was intended to be broad, and with that respect, knowing that the Avenue of the Fountains project was an unknown for now.
Okay then. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and any speaker cards on this?
No, ma'am.
All right then. No other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor, 7-0.
Thank you.
All right, consideration of resolution 2012-34, approving an intergovernmental agreement with Valley Metro for a transit planning study in the amount of $60,000, utilizing local transportation assistance fund 2, LTAF 2, project funds awarded by Valley Metro Regional Public Transportation Authority of fiscal year 12-13. And Ken, going right. Okay. Going right to Joan?
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have representatives from the Regional Public Transportation Authority here tonight to make a presentation, but before we bring them up, I think it might be beneficial for the public to give just a very brief history of how we got to this point. Prior to fiscal year 2010-11, the town received LTAP 2 funding from RPTA to provide special transit services to our qualified residents. The town was required at that time to match 25% of that, and that was provided from the general fund. Then the LTAP 2 funds were swept by the legislature in 2011. However, recently, the United States District Court ordered the state treasurer to reinstate public transportation funding in Maricopa County from the Powerball lottery game proceeds with an effective date of fiscal year 2011-12. Accordingly, the town applied for and received LTAP 2 funding for public transportation in the amount of about $66,000 with no required matching funds. So during the discussions between staff and RPTA, it was determined that if the town really desires to plan for future transit services within the town and throughout the metropolitan area, it would be best to conduct a study to determine where there is a need, and if so, what type of program will provide the best benefit to our residents. The town has had no transportation master plan in the past at all, so now might be the time to do that. And we want to have as much information as possible to make sure that the transportation program will be successful. So that's how we got to this point of determining that it might be best to have a study to see what our needs are. And at this point, I'll bring forward Mr. Wolf Groth. He's the Director of Planning and Development with RPTA.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the Town Council, I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you this evening. I just want to make a real quick introduction. I'm going to turn over to my staff here to give you the full explanation of what we're doing, but I think you've gotten a lot of the background I was already going to give you, but first of all, our purpose again is to initiate a transit planning study to help you better understand what it would take to provide a level of service that would also provide good ridership. So, in fact, when we started this discussion a few months ago with your town staff, we were asked initially just to prepare some cost information for extending one route from East Scottsdale over into Fountain Hills, and we recognized that the kind of service that we could provide with the funding that's available through this lottery fund probably wouldn't provide a high enough level of service to really access your community very well, as well as not getting good ridership. So we said probably a better use of your funds as a first step is to do a study to understand what does it take to provide a decent level of service, and what would it take to get response if there is an opportunity. And so we've been working with your staff to develop a scope of work, and we are now here before you to explain what that study would be. And again, this would be a study that is with lottery funds that require no local match. So I know you just got done with a couple items where you're getting gifts, so this I guess is another gift. So with that, what I'm going to do is actually, before I turn it over to Darren, I'm going to introduce Darren. Darren Lozano is our System and Service Development Manager for Valley Metro, and I also have two other people in the audience I'd like to call attention to. One is Janet Strauss, and she is our project manager for this project. And then also Scott Miller, who is back there, who is with HDR, and he is our primary consultant, and he and his team will support us in this study effort. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Darren.
Thank you, Wolf. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for allowing us to come here tonight and present to you on this study. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the study is going to entail. So one thing when we were developing the scope of work is we needed to understand what we were writing the scope to. So what we came up with were a few items in terms of the study purpose. One of those is, of course, to look at what the system connectivity opportunities are. So basically, look at what neighboring communities have in terms of transit and seeing how Fountain Hills could possibly tie into those services. Also, as Wolf mentioned, identifying the transit ridership market. One of the most important things we do is when we're putting service on the streets is figuring out who the riders are, where they're coming from, and that'll help us determine the best type of service. And then going along those lines, the third bullet there is talking about transit mode alternatives. Obviously we operate light rail, we operate circulators, local buses, express, rapid. There's all types of transit options out there. So as part of this study, we really want to identify what are the best solutions in terms of transit. And then finally, one of the things we want to do is look at short-term and long-term investments. This study, as you'll see by the schedule I'm going to present here, is about a year-long study. And it made sense to take a look at what the full potential is in terms of what the transit options could be. But in the same respect, what are some of the short-term opportunities? And you're going to see this slide here one other time when I'm talking about one of the other tasks. But of course, as I mentioned, we need to determine what exactly is, what are the characteristics of the town of Fountain Hills as we embark in this study. So we'll be looking at socioeconomic trends in terms of who our potential riders could be, look at ages, demographics, where people are located basically. And also not only the current land use, but also the future land use. Where does Fountain Hills see development occurring? So when we're talking about these long-term solutions, where could we possibly expand transit services? And then also I mentioned briefly looking at not only the current transit that's there, but also what's the program transit. Maricopa Association of Governments has the regional transportation plan that looks at the long-range transit possibilities for the region, and so looking at that and seeing what are still feasible and what are some other options that come out of the study. And then finally, the transit investments within the study area. Typically, the study area is basically defined by neighboring communities, but we thought with Fountain Hills location, we thought maybe expanding the service area to about 15 miles. We could take a look at not only neighboring communities, but communities even beyond that. So looking at, say, Tempe, Scottsdale, Fort McDowell, Fort McDowell, and also the Salt River, Pima County communities to see where we could possibly look at joint opportunities, look at services that already service those areas, and see how they can apply to Fountain Hills. And I'm going to go through the various tasks we identified through these studies, and these are also identified in the scope of work. First and foremost, we want to have a public and agency involvement component to this. Working with town staff, what we need to do is figure out who can help us or what's the best way to get the word out about this study. It's been advised that we form a transit advisory group with the area stakeholders. And as I mentioned, those are going to include individuals from the various cities I mentioned. But I want you to keep in mind that this is really a Fountain Hills study. That being said, we'd like to kind of bounce ideas off this technical advisory group through the work that we do, see if there's any input that we can receive as we embark on this study. And also we'd like to integrate input from some type of meeting or survey. I've been involved in several of these studies, and I'm sure you have as well in terms of trying to get information out to the public. I've been to several public meetings in terms of long-term transit options, and there's been maybe one or two people. But working with city staff, we'd like to figure out the best way to get involved. I've found that if you go to where folks are and kind of introduce the subject, we get more engagement. So, if there's the Town of Fountain Hills website, if there's a community event where we can set up a booth and kind of talk about what we're doing, we're going to look at all those types of opportunities. And then finally, of course, we'd like to post that we're actually doing this effort on our website. When we develop some type of survey, that'll be posted there as well, and we'll look to folks around the town to get that word out. The second task, and as I mentioned, this is kind of what we're going to be doing at the very beginning, is looking at what's out there today. So we'll be looking at the prior and ongoing studies, and as you see the graphic here, we'll be looking at not only what Fountain Hills has in terms of studies, but also the neighboring communities in terms of their existing transit service, future transit service, not only from the local perspective, but any regional plans as well. And this next task will be taking a look at existing and future conditions. And I talked about this already, but we're going to be looking at the study area that we've identified for the town of Fountain Hills. And then we'll also be looking at the regional and local transit investments. I do say transit investments, but also any types of major infrastructure improvements, any major road improvements, anything that could possibly tie into or affect any type of transit service. And so after we've identified all of the kind of the background information, it'll be time to actually develop service options. So with this task, what we'd like to do is, using all that information we've come up with, take a look at what we could possibly do in terms of transit. As I mentioned, we should look at possibly connecting to existing service, and in the long term looking at connecting to future bus service. And then also looking at service types. Again, figuring out what is the best fit for the community, whether it be a circulator, a local connection to a local bus. I know there's an express route that's nearby here that serves the Mayo Clinic, and the route, going back to my notes, the Route 514 is Scottsville Express, so maybe adding more frequency on that could be a short-term solution. And then also we'll look at the recommended hours of operation, frequency, and of course, what we basically, I should say, live and die on is a cost estimate, seeing how much all these recommendations are going to cost. Not only in the short term, but the long-term investments, looking at the capital costs and operational costs of these proposed services. And continuing on, we'd like to go into a little more detail, because not only do we identify the big picture in terms of what type of service we can implement, but also where should the service go. So identifying the major activity centers, and through the survey or the public outreach effort, asking people where they'd like to go, where they'd like to see served in Fountain Hills, whether it be community centers, the town center, a major shopping district. That's all going to be considered. We'll also look at vehicle types, passenger facilities, what's the best fit, where are the good locations for bus facilities, possibly the usage of existing park and rides or future park and rides, and then any types of transit corridor improvements that, if we're looking long term, if there's like a BRT route, for example, what could those be? And one of the final tasks that we'll look at is actually developing recommendations and performance criteria. So after we look at the options and we come up with what we recommend or jointly recommend as the proper options, we'll be coming back to council and we'll talk about the recommendations that we come up with the town staff. And what we like to also do is not only look at the recommendations, but identify performance measures. So, services are in place. How are we going to be able to tell whether or not those services are successful? So we want to identify those measures with this study. And finally, this gets into the actual strategies and the action plan. So this is where I was talking about. We want to come back and talk about short-term and long-term investments. Well, this is where we'd actually like to present what those short-term investments would be, talk about some opportunities, some possible constraints. And so this is really going to be the final deliverable, and this I envision kind of coming back and presenting to you here. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking at about a year-long effort. I posted the schedule up here. The public and agency involvement plan, we'll be doing that kind of on an ongoing basis. We'll envision getting information from the public, but then in certain times presenting what we come up with, options, recommendations, to also get input on that. And as you can also see, we have a lot of activity that will be going on concurrently, with a lot of it going through, hopefully through the spring and summertime, and then with the final, plan towards the end of next year between August and December. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You mentioned the Transit Advisory Group with area stakeholders. And so I'm assuming people from Fountain Hills will be involved in that?
Yes, of course.
Okay. And were you considering multiple stops? You're considering more than one stop in the study for around town, or what exactly are you thinking about for that?
That is the plan. Again, not having that had a chance to dive into the plan, but that's something we like to get out of the working with the public, working with this TAG group, working with staff, figuring out where those stops should be located. So I definitely envision more than just one stop.
Okay, and the last question I have is, we get a lot of requests for transportation for disabled people who have to go to dialysis and you'll be taking all that consideration. You'll be looking at specialized type busing also that you have a need for.
Yes, it's something that, again, we'd ask your help on in terms of, what the needs and desires are and talk about that in here. I can envision that being kind of a short or midterm type solution, but, yeah, we consider that.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. Just a couple questions. It looks, and if I did this right, is it about half Valley Metro and half HDR? Is that what you think?
That is correct, yes.
And both entities are be involved for pretty much the whole time of it, or?
Yes, that is the plan. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wanted to thank you. I wanted to ask you, the Board of Directors of Valley Metro, I think this was going to be on their agenda like last week. Do you know how that came out? Did they actually hear it?
It was approved, yes.
Great.
Last Thursday.
The other, just a couple of things I wanted to ask you about Prop 400, possible integration or accessing any of that in this project. And then I wanted to thank you because you mentioned infrastructure and things like that, and you heard us discussing the possible median park and the intersection, and so those things, it appears that you'll be taking all of that into consideration. But my question about Prop 400 and also the fact that since this is going into another fiscal year, last year, and I think we talked to you, we were told to come up with a plan. So, they said, okay, here's the amount of money, and we had to come up with a plan, and we didn't actually have anything definite at that point. Do you think there'll be any sort of problem with, say they tell us in July, we want to know by July 30th or 31st what your plan is, but if you think it'll be okay if we say, well, we're in the midst of a project right now, or, a study right now, and that should yield something, but not until maybe December.
Councilwoman Dickey, could you just clarify, I guess, what you'd like to see, or what you think that this might be in conflict with, or what it needs to consider, essentially?
Yeah, Mayor, last year when we were told that we were getting funding back because of the air quality issue, then they wanted us to present to, I don't know if it was to you or to ADOT or to somebody, what we were going to plan on doing with the $65,000. So I think we came up with something that we voted on, and I believe it was over the summer. So I'm wondering if, since this project is going to take until possibly December, will we be put upon to have to come up and say what we're going to do with it before we're actually ready?
Okay, so you're speaking about the LTAF funds itself. Make sure that, yes, and I did check on that, and actually, having this plan in place and starting this plan, that will fall within the allotted time frame for these funds.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And then again, just Prop 400, if you think we can access any of that.
We'll answer the Prop 400.
Thanks.
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Dickey. With regard to the lottery funding, of course, that's every year we receive, assuming it continues, which has been discontinued once before, but assuming this continues, we would every year receive a similar amount of funds. It may vary a little bit from year to year, but we anticipate something similar each year. And each year we have the same opportunity for the communities. Now in the future we're looking at how we program these funds into the future. This first year we were somewhat surprised to get the funding back again, so we quickly moved some money out to all the communities and made sure everybody got their share. But in the future, we're not exactly sure today. I can't tell you exactly how we're going to disseminate those funds, but there will be a process each year for accessing the funding that is available. Now, relative to the Prop 400 question, you're talking about the sales tax funds that are available from 2004, and whether or not there's an opportunity for funds to be available to this community from that sales tax. Right now, I have to say that all the funds are programmed, and in fact, we've had a lot of challenges over the last 3 or 4 years now because of the revenues have not been meeting the expectations, and they've been down substantially, and we've had to slow down some of our plans from the Prop 400 sales tax considerably. So it would be probably a challenge today. I'm not saying it's we can or can't. I don't have really an answer for you, but today the funds are programmed, and it would be a challenge to loosen those funds up unless there was a big surge of additional funds coming in.
Anyone else? Councilman Yates?
First, I'm a big proponent of this type of operation, and I appreciate the fact that you want to study before we just start saying put in 3 stops. This is part of the economic pie that we need to kind of bring us to that same level on multiple levels. I know some of the out parcel restaurants that have come to Fountain Hills have asked, well, where are our workers coming from? And this offers that, as well as our existing businesses often have trouble finding some workers, so I appreciate this. But moving forward, whether it's 3 stops that we find that we need, or 5 stops, or hopefully more, typically when you do this with a municipality, how does the breakdown work out as far as paying for the infrastructure? Obviously, we want the model to pay for itself, but at the end of the day, if each stop costs $10,000, and I'm just randomly picking numbers, how is that paid for? What type of partnership are you looking for?
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Yates. As far as the payment of any bus stop improvements, is what you're talking about, any shelters or benches, whatever, typically that's been a responsibility of the local communities. Again, if there's funds like this available through the lottery, those funds can be used for that purpose. I think the question is, what's more important, the service or providing a lot of amenities? Now, obviously, you'd like to have both. And I think that's one of the things that we'll evaluate as part of this study is, first of all, how much is the service or different kinds of service options going to cost? And also, if we want to look at improvements, like bus stop improvements, how much will those cost? And I think at some point in this study, we'll need to assess what are the possible funding sources. There may be other funding sources. There are federal monies that come to this region every year that all of our communities are able to compete for. And so, I don't have an answer for you today that, there's a pot of money I can give you for bus stop improvements. I think as we go through this study, we should see what are the overall costs, and then we can assess what opportunities there are for funding to meet those needs. And if there is an opportunity for funding, at least you have an understanding what it's going to take, and perhaps, in future opportunities for funding within the community even, and at least you have some idea of what it's going to cost to do those kind of things.
Madam Mayor, as a follow-up, and we're not locked in that we have to have the full sunshade, everything. It could be as simple as starting out with just the post, saying a bus stop, and then graduating to, I just don't want, because it's going to be expensive, I just don't want the sticker shock all of a sudden.
Yep. Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Yates, I should follow up just one more thing. One of the things that we have seen in some communities, and I don't know where your community stands on this, but by providing advertising at shelters, we have been able to, the advertising companies actually pay for the installation of those shelters, love the improvements. So, I know some communities hate it, some communities love it, but that is a way to pay for it, that you would get something, at no cost. Of course, there's the cost of advertising, or that results. So that is one way an alternative to implement improvements.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds like it's a 12-month process from concept to implementation. And how often can we expect to have a report on progress?
Well, I may ask Bill on that, but ideally, we'd like to come to you at the major milestones here at the end of the various tasks, so possibly every 3 months or so, if that's acceptable.
Certainly.
Great. Okay. Anyone? Councilman Elsie?
Just want to get some clarification, maybe this is legal or town manager. What are the limitations on spending these LTAF funds? What are the areas that we can use it for, besides studies?
I think that's probably
All right.
more appropriate.
All right.
They would know more about it than we would. Please.
Mayor, Councilmember, the LTAF funds are specifically available for public transportation purposes. They can be used for a variety of different ways, and you can use them for service, you can use them for capital improvements, you can use them for studies, and to some extent, Valley Metro has been defining what those uses are, what can be, through policy discussion. I don't think that the legislation itself was really that clear where the line was, but as far as what kinds of transit uses you could have. But it was specific to public transportation.
And Mayor, if I may, as I remember just when we were discussing last year as far as these funds were concerned, I think there was some talk, at least at the time, of when there was the matching requirement to politely decline the funds because we didn't have the funding in the town to support a program of this sort. So there was that, and I remember that there were substantial costs that were discussed as far as the cutouts that were going to be needed for the bus stops and some other things that we weren't going to have as far as capital investments from a town standpoint. And the sense that I'm getting from you gentlemen is that those funds may or may not be there next year. We got the $65,000 now. We may not have anything next year. We may have more, may have less. It just really depends.
Right.
And if we're looking at doing a bus program here in town based in part on these LTAP funds, I certainly don't think that we have enough. I mean, we have the monies to contribute because that was part of our discussion before. And, some of our specific needs in our town is already been brought up by the mayor, are transportation for those that need to get to the Mayo Clinic or those that need to get dialysis. Those sound to be what our needs are. And if we have the ability to use these funds without the matching funds to do capital improvements and do other things, because that was a concern of ours before, that we would have to dip into our capital improvements in our budget to do these things. If we can use those monies now and then see what happens with LTAP funding later, because let's say we get this study done, and I understand I'm sure you gentlemen are going to do a good job with that, but then we don't have funding next year. We as a town don't have funding to implement a transit program here in town. So how long that study sits on the shelf, along with other studies, will remain to be seen. And I think it could be a waste of money that we could potentially use the $65,000 in capital investments. So later on, if we do get additional funds, maybe that could be used for the actual transportation.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Leger?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Elke, will you read my notes over here? Because I guess that's the same concern I have, that historically the LTAP monies we received have been pretty consistent in terms of dollar amount, and there's not a whole lot you can do with $65,000. My concern is at the end of the day, if we do this study, and I'm sure you guys will do an awesome job, can we implement your recommendations? And I certainly share that same concern. And Councilman Yates asked a question that I was interested in as well, which was capital improvements. And we just don't have that program to do that. So if I may ask our finance director a question in this regard, I'd appreciate it. Julie, in addition to LTAP monies, are there any additional dollars that you foresee from a budgetary perspective we could use for expanding our program?
Mayor, members of the council, currently, looking out into the future without some significant development, that if there was any additional cost related to the transportation, it would have to be taken from somewhere else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I also want to emphasize or make clear that the transportation is not just bus. It could turn out that our need is a dial-a-ride program, and some of those smaller or may not cost as much.
Sure.
And if I could address also the issue of the LTAP funds continuing on, I think that I'm pretty confident that it's going to continue on, only because the court has told the state that this money is already set aside and has to be used for transportation. So they've overturned what the legislature did. So I think that the chances of it going away again, as the legislature trying to sweep it again, is pretty remote. Would you guys agree?
I
out on a limb.
I would agree with that. It's just the amount. When you look at our share in that formula, there's not a lot we can do, and that kind of puts to rest some of my concerns, because I was thinking, once again, at the end of the day, we come up with a sophisticated program, and you guys are going to come up with an awesome program. A program, at this point in time, high probability we can't afford. So if flexibility is to go to a dollar ride, that would be one particular option. So, and with respect to federal grants, you caught my attention on that. What have been some of your successes in terms of local municipalities in terms of transit federal grants money?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, each year this region receives
federal formula transit funds that come to the region, and they're programmed through MAG each year. In addition to that, there are also other federal funds that come also through. Most of these monies come through MAG, through Maricopa Association of Governments, and there are also they're called the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Funds, Surface Transportation Program funds. Those are actually in the highway pot, but they're flexible funds that can be used for different purposes, and we've utilized those funds. In various communities have utilized those funds for various improvements, and those federal funds are for capital improvements. It's very rare that there are federal funds available for operations. And if they are available for operations like these CMAQ funds I just mentioned, they might be available for the first couple of years for a demonstration operation, and then they're not available after that. And they're tougher monies also. They're pretty much spoken for in the region, but each year there's always opportunities. In fact, MAG each year has what they call a closeout program each year, where there's funds that are going to be lost if they're not used, and sometimes there's opportunities in that as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
And while I think none of us really like to always do more studies, I think just seeing the program that we have right now, which is a volunteer program, our biggest difficulty is we don't know what the needs are. You know, we don't know how many people need to go 3 times a week to dialysis, how many people need specialized transportation, how many people just need to get out of town to the hospital, to the clinic. And unfortunately, you are the only people that can do this kind of in-depth study for us to tell us. But I'm glad that it's not an all-in package, that there will be options in there for lesser cost if that's all we can do. If we can start small and see where the absolute need is, the most need, and then concentrate on that first. So I would be in favor of doing this only because I don't see any other way that we can identify the needs of our community. Anyone else? Councilman Elsie?
Thank you. Gentlemen, what are the restrictions on expending these funds? Do we have to spend them this fiscal year if we have a program in place? If we don't use all the funds this fiscal year, can those roll over, or do we have to refund it?
Mayor, members of the council, I did check on that actually, and from what I understand, you can get a 1-year extension. I take that back. You can take 2 years from when the funds are dated. So basically, you have until the end of FY14 to use those funds.
So if we get the funds this year, we've got 2 years in which to spend those funds.
That's correct, with the extension. Yeah.
With the extension, and in between that time, we should expect additional funds for the next fiscal year, assuming everything goes as.
Assuming everything goes as is.
And Mayor, I would say that with the is it Dial-A-Ride or Give a Lift Dial-A-Ride program, let me just ask this for educational purposes. With the Dial-A-Ride, is that something you can pay as you go based on the number of calls that are made, that are received? Do we know that?
You mean the riders themselves?
Yes.
That's a good question. Let me turn to one of my colleagues here to answer that question, who knows more about the program.
Thank you.
Mayor, Councilman Elke. The Dial-A-Ride typically has some fixed costs associated with it. Think of Dial-A-Ride as a taxi cab service, but a shared ride taxi cab service. So if Mrs. Thompson asks for a ride, and so does Mr. Johnson, they may come and pick up both of them and then take them to a separate destination. So you really have to have somebody on staff with a vehicle waiting. So there are those fixed costs involved. Some other communities in our region, as well as across the country, have looked at even lesser cost programs. They're really sort of more at the ready of both the agency sponsoring the program as well as the user. And these are things like cab voucher programs. Scottsdale and Mesa both offer these. These are where there's a negotiation between the city and a taxi cab company, preferably a local taxi cab company, so you're reinvesting the money locally. And you create a special package where the taxi company will offer a ride for, let's say, a $10 fee. Community members who need the taxi vouchers are given a limited number of vouchers each month that they can use this service. Then the taxi company, when they pick, simply a person calls the taxi company, requests a ride. The person then pays with the taxi voucher, and that taxi voucher is then sent back from the taxi company back to the sponsoring agency for reimbursement. That's but where dial-a-ride where you have those fixed costs, if you have to have somebody on staff and a vehicle waiting, where you can kind of control those fixed costs a little bit more if you go with the taxi voucher program.
Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. Mayor, I would be more in favor of using these $65,000 that we have to have perhaps this taxi cab type voucher, because I think, with all the experience up here on this dais, that we should have a pretty good idea as to what the needs are of the town and the dial-a-ride. I don't hear people clamoring for bus route service coming through town, and I would rather see that we use these monies right away for our residents. Have the money. We have 2 years in which to spend it, and in between that time, we're going to get additional funds, perhaps or not. It depends, of course, is what it sounds like. So I feel like we should probably use the monies that we have now, use that voucher program, the cab voucher, use it until it's spent. Use those monies there, kind of see how that works, and if that's something that is feasible, I think that would better serve our residents, quite frankly.
Well, this cab voucher, though, we're not talking about the type of service that would be able to take disabled, or that's a specialty type of cab, as I understand it, which is why we are right now having the problem of transporting, because you need specialized vehicles and specialized equipment, as I understand. So if we're just dealing with just a dial-a-ride, that's basically just taking somebody who is able just to a destination without consideration for, a lot of the dialysis patients are sick on the way home, and so that's why we can't just use cars in our volunteer programs or something like that. And I know that our volunteer coordinator has been dealing with this, and it's very difficult to know what the needs are of the community. We have no idea how many people are riding to the hospital, how many people are going to the Mayo, how many people are just looking for rides. That's why, I think that while this seems like a lot of money that we could use for different programs, I just don't think we have the expertise right now, since we don't have any numbers. I can't tell you how many people would need a specialized transportation where we limit it to the specialized vans for them. So it seems like a lot of money, but I think it would run out pretty fast if we start just giving it out. Any other comments, Councilwoman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. And again, Mayor, talking about a conversation that we've had over the last few years when the funding from the county, we stopped getting that, and so then we kind of went through all of the, well, now we have 10 riders and we're spending, thousands of dollars per rider, so then we had to really reevaluate on whether that was a good way of spending taxpayer money, when we came up with this great give a lift. I know council is spending quite a bit of money for a community-wide survey, a general survey, and because we see value in that, because that is a way for other issues for us to get some good broad-based input. This is definitely a discussion that I don't think, really, not to disparage anybody, but I don't think anybody up here really has the knowledge in this sort of arena to know what would really be the best thing for the most people. And it could be, the answer will be, we don't need this, or we don't want a regular bus, but there are quite a few incidences of people requesting just regular bus service. I mean, it may be a ride to the light rail in Mesa that would help people to get downtown or to get to ball games or whatever. So I see a lot of value in this. I see that this is, I guess I don't have the same worry about the LTAP money. It could vary, but the economy is picking up, so the fact that it's based on revenue, there's a good chance it'll still be there. As long as we still have air pollution, we will still have LTAP money coming to us in Maricopa County. We are actually luckier than some of the other places in the state, because that LTAP money, they did not get reimbursed. So I really would ask us to look at the long-term effect of doing something like this. We could come up with an answer that we've been grappling with for years on, is there a way to address transit issues in Fountain Hills? And the answer could be they don't want it, but we'll never get there unless we go for it. And again, this isn't taxpayer money from the town of Fountain Hills. This is money that we were fortunate to find out that we got kind of last minute and what do we want to do with it to the best thing going forward. This study will be looking at the variability. Every city in the state that has LTAP money is going to be going through the same little bit of uncertainty, and that's built in, and that's what we have faith that is going to be built into what projects that they can come up with. So that's just my opinion about this.
Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. I concur with what Councilmember Dickey is saying. I too am tired of the surveys and the studies and et cetera, but after being on council for 4 years and hearing the discussions about where the money's going to come from and how we're going to get people around the valley, et cetera, as well as being an ambassador for the clean air movement, I can tell you that I think that one day soon we will be faced with more public transportation, and I think this is just a good starting place for us. So I concur with the study that needs to be done, so we have a roadmap as to how to get there.
It seems that we have a speaker now on this. Could we have our speaker come up, Jim Judge?
Mayor, Council, my name is Jim Judge. I live in Fountain Hills. And I have a couple comments regarding this concept. First of all, I'm really glad to hear there's some money coming back to us. That's very important. But right along with that, I don't think we want to go through like we did in 2011, where we had to tell people they no longer could have transportation. That was pretty painful. So what we do should be sustaining. There are two things I feel very strongly about, and that is people have to have access to a good quality nutritional meal a day, and they need transportation when they need to go to doctor's appointments and physical therapy and even grocery stores. We have a lot of people in Fountain Hills that are living on Social Security. Their families are living back, someplace away, and they're limited. The Give a List program is working pretty well. We need to expand it. One of the things the Senior Services Advisory Commission has agreed to do this year is to work on transportation, try to improve. We have some issues because of liability insurance. Those are the things that we really have to deal with. But quite honestly, this is my thought. If there's $60,000 to $65,000, we can put that to very good use immediately with the Dial-A-Ride. I've talked to the Dial-A-Ride people, and with these vouchers, people don't have to call, and say I need a cab in a half hour. Other organizations in the valley, such as DeWitt and Phoenix, they schedule a week in advance. The people up at Cave Creek have a wonderful program up there. But again, they all schedule in advance. People going to houses know exactly when they go. They know exactly what time they're going. And many doctor's appointments same way. As a rule, a week or more in advance. So I certainly would be willing to work with a committee of citizens and perhaps Ken Buchanan, and let's do our own survey first to see if what are the needs. I think we've got a pretty good idea. The doctors in town just tell us what the needs are. Let's see what we can do before we spend that kind of money. So with that, I'll leave. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, I think just to pull out my crystal ball, I think what may happen, we'll have this study done. It'll be done in December of 2013. It'll be phenomenal. It'll lay out a number of things that we can do. It'll have the whole laundry list. There'll be some a la cartes in there, the low end, cheap end, and then of course the Cadillac version. And I think what we're going to find is we're not even going to be able to afford the cheap end, even with LTAF funds of $65,000 a year. That study's going to go on the shelf, and then maybe 3, 4, 5 years later, we might have the funds then to implement some type of a program, at which time then we're probably going to have another study done to see what the needs and everything of the town are at that particular time, and the money is going to be wasted. I agree with Mr. Judge, and I think with our Senior Services Advisory Commission and the other commissions that this town has,
that we can get a good handle on it. We can use the $65,000 on our residents immediately, and we have 2 years in which to spend it. We've got another year to see what the LTAF funding is going to be next year. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, but then we can use that and use that for our residents now and not on another study.
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Hicks?
Respectfully disagree. In order for us to get to that next level, and when I say the next level where we're protecting everybody's quality of life, we're providing the dial-a rides, we're providing rides to the hospital and to the grocery store and all those things, you need to do a market study. You need to figure out, there's probably several different markets that we haven't even considered, and that no matter what our backgrounds are up here, and I'd like to think I'm somewhat versed in this, that you do a background and you will be surprised what will come out. Jenny just brought up something I didn't even think of, are the people who want to go to the games, just going down to Gilbert Road and hopping on that one. But all those types of things will come to fruition by doing this. I view this as an investment, a true market study, and knowing that we'll have the flexibility to do as simple a bus stop as a pole with the sign up and sell some advertising, I can buy into that and jump on board that we can get, I was going to say the Yugo, but I'm somewhat dating myself, but the lower end of the spectrum, as well as, work toward the higher end. But I definitely am in support of this, and I think it's definitely a necessity in order for us to really realize what our potential is. And 2, 3, 4 years down the road, by doing this now, this investment will grow into something that, will help everybody. And I said this before, I just know on the business side of things, it has been brought up in multiple meetings with small business, that they need help getting some workers to and from work. So I think there's several untapped markets that we're not thinking about.
Yes, I would agree with what you just said, and also this study is going to show us how we can link up with other, like you're going to be doing other cities that are around us, and how if we do get a bus system in here, which our expense obviously are the stops, but like you said, we could certainly, we've seen what we can do with creatively getting costs down. Then we have something permanent in place, and not just spending money on one ride and then another ride and then the money runs out. I'd like to see something a little more permanent, and so that our residents can count on something always to be there. We do need a bus service here. We know that. And some people that are utilizing right now the dial-a-ride or just their neighbors to drive them somewhere can count on that. So I don't think there's any way that I have the expertise to say that, that how many people need the service. But even if I did, I think that would be such a temporary fix. I would like something a little bit more permanent to ensure people that there's going to be something there for the future. And I just don't want to assume that the money's not going to be there, and I don't think that the study is going to go obsolete in 2 or 3 years. Our demographics are pretty much stable. So while I'm not in favor of doing studies, I know that we've tried to determine how many people need this or that or where the big need is, and we really haven't been able to come up with that ourselves. There's even doctors in town that would like to know how many people in town are in need of dialysis because they're actually considering having a unit here, and they haven't been able to come up with that. And that's certainly going to give them that information, and we might be able to get more services here right here in Fountain Hills if the survey shows us that there are certain medical needs that we have here. And our medical facility that's here right now is growing with more and more doctors as they realize, we need a cardiologist, now we need, we need a pediatrician, they're adding all these different doctors because they're slowly realizing, and I think this study is going to also show us that. I think we need to get the big picture.
Yeah.
Councilor Hanson? Sorry,
I think doing the thorough assessment now is going to help more wisely spend the money in the future. We've tried some piecemeal things in the past. We've tried some taxi services in the past. And I think we need a more comprehensive study into this whole thing so that going forward, the money's gonna be spent in a better fashion.
But we've had, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, do you want to add something else?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
You know, this, having sat here for 6 years, this is déjà vu for me. I mean, this is a very circular discussion. We've been here before, we've done this before. We've run a program, we've had our Human Resources Director Manager program. She knew what the need was, we knew what the need was. And what we know is the greatest need in this town are those folks that are probably the most disabled folks in this town. And we could hardly afford that. And you're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do what I'm hearing you propose in terms of those needs out there. I guess just cutting to the chase, do we currently have service in Fountain Hills? Can anyone answer that question for me? Transportation service, bus service, do we currently have any service? Express bus. Can anyone share with me how many people, what our ridership is on the express bus?
Yes. The express, there's like two trips a day. They're leave here each day on weekdays, and there's about 20 people on each of the on the two trips each day.
Okay. 20 people.
Yeah. 40 a day. 20 total, is what you're saying, right? Yeah, 20, the two trips combined is 20 riders per day.
And it goes from point A to point B?
It goes from here through Scottsdale, and it picks up additional passengers in Scottsdale, and then the service ends in downtown Phoenix.
So of those 20 folks that ride, do we have any idea how many of those people actually come out of Fountain Hills?
Those are the Fountain Hills residents.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So there's more people on the buses than the 20. So the 20 are from Fountain Hills.
Okay. It's from my experience that observing those buses for years, having lived in this town for as long as I have, it looks virtually empty most of the time coming in and out of Fountain Hills. I'm not questioning your statistics. So my point there is that we do have transportation and it's not utilized. We know that our needs that we can probably afford in the hierarchy of needs goes to special transportation. We have run a special transportation program before. We know what those needs are. Mayor, if I may ask our HR director to come up because I'd like to ask her a question in this regard, Joan. We're talking about a study here. How did we determine in the past who were in need of this service? Because we had a substantial amount of people utilizing the service.
Well, we had when we had the transportation program that the county provided, and then when they discontinued that, we just took over the people that were disabled or that went to the STARS program, and there was probably a total of 12 out of that. So we just took those people into the special transportation program only because that's the only funds we had to use.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. The only comment that I agree with Vice Mayor Lejay that bus service, the express, is probably underutilized. It does leave about 6 a.m. in the morning, and then we don't see it again until it comes back in the evening. So that's probably good for more people that are going to work, maybe hooking up with light rail or something like that to go downtown or wherever they work, and then they know they're not going to be coming back till the evening. So, I can see why there's not that many people riding it who need to go to a doctor because they're probably not going to be leaving at 6 a.m. if they have a 2 o'clock appointment. But if we had more of a service, then we might not have to only have like a 6 a.m. bus, and more people might utilize it. I think Councilwoman Dickey wants to add something to this.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, that wouldn't get you to light rail because you'd be taking the bus all the way downtown. Light rail, like the one that's really convenient for us, is the one in Mesa. And of course, Mesa is extending theirs even further because, and that's a bigger issue, like let's be part of the valley here by trying to look long term. The thing about the bus too is, like you said, it leaves really early. It's one trip and you have to be able to leave work by like 4:30 to because that's when it leaves in front of the Capitol. So, it's better than nothing and it's great if it's 20 people or 25 people, but again, if we get back to our discussions when we were discussing the vans and that we were using before, I believe, and of course it's my memory, but we were getting down to that we were spending about $10,000 per person on those special trips, and we were joking that you could buy a person a car for that. So I'm just trying to get some perspective here. I'm not saying one thing is bad or the other, but that's some perspective. There weren't that many people using it. We were spending about $10,000 per person, and we really are representing an entire town here, and the only way I feel comfortable that we're going to put forward something that is the best for the entire town would be to get this knowledge. It's a one-shot deal. It's not going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars because they know the parameters we're working with. That's what they do. So I can't see why they would recommend something to us that they know we would have no way of affording.
Okay, and it looks like we have another speaker. Would you like to bring up the other speaker?
Fred Coleman?
Thanks, Fred.
Hi, I'm Fred Coleman. I'm a resident of Fountain Hills. Ms. Mayor and council members, one of the things that I've been involved in, my wife has been involved in, is the transportation issue here in Fountain Hills for a number of years. As many of you may know or remember, about 15 years ago, we had a Red Cross van in Fountain Hills. And we made arrangements with the Red Cross to give us time on that van for those residents that needed medical transportation. Unfortunately, that program ended and the van disappeared. After that, we had a bus system for a short time running in Fountain Hills, which was always underutilized. Right now, we have Fountain Village. They have 2 buses, one of which is a handicapped unit, well equipped to transport handicapped people, that's being underutilized. I think if we tried maybe to get them involved in some discussion, we've got $65,000. A portion of that could go to the survey, try to develop some information. But our most pressing need today is those people that need medical transportation. And quite frankly, the only one that's really equipped to help us there is Fountain Village. They've got the bus, they've got the driver, both of which are underused at this time. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Fred. And perhaps we could, Fountain View Village, some personnel from there could be added to your team as one of the stakeholders, since they are involved in the elderly care. Did you want to add something else?
If I may.
Councilman Yates.
Thank you, Madam. I'm all for paying for for this type of service, but it's not sustainable. We've already said the number fluctuates. So if we pay for the service this year, that's not to say we'll have it next year. So I look at this, and all the nonprofits in the country do this right now. They look for sustainable business models whereby they have something that's generating revenue that can pay for the services or the programs that they really need. Every nonprofit's doing this, and it's, to use a biblical phrase, it's give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man a fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. And I hate to sound corny like that, but I'm looking at this as we need to find what the sustainable model is. It might come back to us that there is no sustainable model, then we're back to just subsidizing this internally. But I'm just sharing with everybody that I more than appreciate the needs, but I just think there's some other ways that we can get, and I've said this before, but basically get the private sector to pay for the public sector, and that's what I'm hoping we'll get out of this.
Well, we've had quite a bit of discussion, and we've heard from different sides, different viewpoints, and from these gentlemen here. I wonder if someone would care to make a motion.
Mayor? Move to approve and substantially the form attached hereto as Exhibit A, the intergovernmental agreement with RPTA relating to the transit planning study for transit planning study in the amount of $60,000 utilizing LTAP 2 funds awarded by Valley Metro RPTA for 2012-13.
Okay. Thank you. Any other council discussion I can call for the vote? We'll make it a roll call vote. Please.
Councilmember Yates?
Aye.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson? Aye. Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Elke? Vice Mayor Lejay?
Nay.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Mayor 5-0. I'm sorry, 5-2.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, gentlemen, and Ms. Strauss for coming out today, and thank you for the presentation, and we look forward to working with you and hearing from you periodically with an update on what you're doing. Thank you very much. Number 11, consideration of professional services agreement with Landmark Design LLC for the Avenue of the Fountains Improvement Project in the amount of $141,940. Ken?
Mayor Cameron, I'll move the council. The Development Services Director has a report to give you regarding the median project and a contract for the design.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. On November 1st, 2012, council directed staff in regards to reducing the scope of the project and to bring back a revised concept plan for council approval. In working with the previous design firm, they felt that they could not meet the time frame of the project to have the design done and bid out and under construction, with construction completed by November 1, 2013. Staff then met with Landmark Design to go over the scope of the project per the November 1 council requirements. We also gave them the constraints of the project to have it constructed by November of 2012. The attached contract provides for a revised concept plan, design, regulatory agency approval if needed, utility company designs and approvals, and the key milestones for the project include potentially contract approval tonight, concept plan back to council for approval on January 17th, 45% plans due into the town in late February, 95% plans due and specifications due in late March, 100% plans and specifications due in early April, and then staff would advertise the project for construction bids in early and mid-May. We'd have a pre-bid meeting mid-May, and then a construction bid opening late May, and back to council for a construction contract in mid-June. We're anticipating a 4-month construction time frame, so we're looking at July, August, September, and October. During design, we also will need to work with all the utility companies, SRP, Southwest Gas, Cox, Quest, the water company, and sanitary district to make sure they review the plans for any conflicts and if we're tying into any of their facilities. The approximate $142,000 contract includes $111,000 for design, $6,000 allowance for utility locating, and $25,000 for the architect services during the construction phase. The anticipated construction budget for the project is $1.2 million. We're also reserving $400,000 for an alternate bid on lighting. So we will bid out the lighting, and then the contractors will bid that separately. And then when we bring that back to council, council can decide based on the bid price if they want to proceed with lighting or not. Staff recommends approval of the contract and can answer any questions you might have.
My only comment is that I'm certainly glad that the amount is a lot less than it was, and again, I want to thank Councilman Brown and Councilman Yates, because I know that they both did a lot of work on this, and we are where we are now because of them. So thank you very much for all the time that you put into this. Any council discussion or questions for Paul? Okay, we have speaker cards? All right, we have speakers.
We have 4 cards. Hugh Henry, followed by Pam Baster. My apologies. But you didn't mark for or against. You just put a note on here. You put a note on that says priority fix the roads.
Priority fix the roads. Okay, Hugh, we'll do that too.
Pam Baster, Ken Quick, and then Michael Miller.
Okay, Pam, you're up.
Okay.
Pam.
Deb, could you go back over the order?
Pam Easter, then Ken Quick, then Michael Miller. And you're Ken?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna let Pam go first.
Okay.
You just do it in the order that the paper was handed in. She's brought us pictures.
Pam Easter, Fountain Hills. And as you addressed me, you did talk about this being a really bittersweet season. We're really trying to work on the positive. We're studying traditions and cultures. We're sharing ideas, rejoicing in similarities, and we're showing respect for differences. Happy Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa. These pictures show, can you guys see? De Kilo. They show the median and the Avenue of the Fountains shining brightly. For 23 years, that median has gladdened the hearts of young and the not so young and lifted spirits of those people who have found they needed to find new norms. Back in 1989, Bruce Hanson gathered volunteers to decorate the Avenue median. We laughed, we sang, we decorated. We oohed as the firemen went high up to decorate those glorious palm trees. We had a ball. We built camaraderie. It was a wonderful feeling. It was a balm for those who had broken hearts, because even back then people had things to suffer. Nature can do that. Holidays can do that. Traditions can do that. Community spirit can do that. We loved and still love the trees, the berms, and the beauty of the median. Many of us do not want the median flat as a pancake with small box trees. Many of us question why you're spending money to destroy the aesthetic beauty at this time. Why not just repair what needs repair and cut down the one sick tree? Who's questioning you? Where are they? Some are steadfastly here. Some are rushing around taking care of family seasonal things. Some don't feel comfortable speaking publicly at meetings. Some don't want your disapproval over having differing views and opinions. Many think it's no use because you've made up your mind and you've made plans. Many wonder who to trust with the spending of their money. I question you, and I love and respect you. We all speak to friends, at parties, at work, while waiting in doctor's offices or while shopping. We who want to save our trees and berms are not buying or selling your idea of a flat market median. We all vote. You're voting on the flats. We'll be voting and thinking about berms and beautiful big trees. Can the term compromise ring anyone's chimes? Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Next is Ken Quick, followed by Michael Miller.
Mayor and council members. My name is Ken Quick, longtime resident of Fountain Hills and a professional forester. On November 8th and November 28th, I wrote a letter relative to the trees on the Avenue of the Fountains to the mayor. To summarize, in the absence of any approved evaluation criteria, I focused on the health and safety of the trees designated for removal in the town plan. I only found one tree that should be removed based on health and safety issues, tree number 6. Also found 2 citrus trees that are dying and could be removed at any time. These trees have no safety issues. For pruning, I could walk the avenue with a couple of climbers and do the necessary corrective pruning all in one day. For the fountains, I don't see any problems that could not be corrected. They are definitely a difference between the actual age and the functional age of the fountains. My recommendations are that the trees are a very valuable asset.
And some of these trees took decades to grow. So I would retain as many trees as possible and only plant replacement trees only when needed. Based on all the water features and the trees, they're very valuable assets. I would now design everything around these two basic assets. And finally, I would hire a project manager just for this project, much like a building contractor. This process would save you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Any questions?
Thank you, Ken.
Okay.
Michael Miller?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Councilperson. My name is Michael Miller, and we'd have a lot more people here tonight if so many in town didn't think that this decision was a foregone conclusion. Many of those people have told me that that will be reflected in their vote on the bond referendum for the streets. There is linkage between this decision and the bond vote. Politically, that's, as you're all aware, that's the way it works. Most don't care which fund the money comes from. They see it all as their tax dollars, and that will be reflected in the bond vote. I think most in this room would agree. The ever-changing rationale for this action, 2 months ago, it was promote development on the south side of the median and to increase tourism. And both of those seem to have been tossed at this point. Now the rationale is to create an event center and improve the sight lines for the fountain. I have no idea how that works if you plant 100 trees, unless the events you're planning for are a regional tree tag competition or the ultimate dog walking experience. Most of you are aware of my development background. I spent about 2 hours on the median on Sunday with a landscape architect and PE that I've worked with for 20 years. We agree that improvements are necessary. It's a question of when. I'd hate to see this happen and then have the bond referendum go into the tank. I'm not opposed to improvements and repairs. That's not the issue. The issue at this point is the question, in my mind, of when. In our most recent rainstorm, the ground fault interrupters on the median did exactly what they were supposed to do, and more potholes erupted on Saguaro. What are taxpayers and voters going to remember? That the lights were out for 2 nights? Or that they have to get a front end realignment of their car? We've heard tonight, we haven't heard yet, because that speaker didn't show up. Advertising this as a fixed price contract, which I know you're not doing, but you're implying that, is misleading. We have no as-built for the undergrounds. Nobody knows what is under those trees or under that sound. That's going to be a cost overrun. It is for sure. Now, maybe money can be saved in the bid package when that all comes in, but I, for one, would not bet on that. The real public backlash will occur when the trees start coming down and when the heavy equipment moves on site to level the median. and the town has other issues to deal with, non-controversial issues, namely the town's other aging public facilities that should be kept in good repair and viable, and more importantly, the health, safety, and liability issue of the disconnect on our current sidewalk connectivity. Lastly, as you are all aware, this is a pretty conservative town, which means by definition, I think, that we're more than happy to spend money on necessities, but not necessarily niceties, unless we are flush, which this town is not. It would be wonderful to have the median up to snuff on ADA issues and functioning as a newly installed median, but please ask yourself where your priorities are. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Anyone else?
No, Mayor.
All right, is there council discussion?
Madam Mayor? Paul? I know initially they were talking, in general, approximate, how much would it cost to fix the bare bone minimum? If I'm not mistaken, it was pretty substantial. Could you elaborate?
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Yates, the concept A, if you will, was right around $1 million.
And that was for bare bones minimum, just fix what we got, getting rid of. So this bid, potentially, because of the way we wrote it up, was not to exceed, was $1.2 million?
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Yates, that's not entirely correct. We don't have a bid written up yet. We'll design it, bid the package out. If it comes in over the $1.2 million, then council will have to make a decision whether or not they want to fund the project or just not do it.
But the point, excuse me, Mayor.
Go ahead.
But the point is, we've set some parameters not to exceed.
In the design contract, they are to design the project to, I believe it's written there, actually $1,150,000, and we would reserve $50,000 as an owner's allowance for unforeseen conditions if we do hit something underground that our utility power line doesn't pick up.
So, Madam Mayor, lastly, then would you agree the vast majority of the funding that we're not to exceed is going towards fixing the bare bones?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. So a few things that Landmark is actually bringing to the table that I think is a little unusual compared to the previous contractor is the estimate that we're going to actually see when it's presented is coming from a general contractor, and it's actually going to be bid out. So we will actually have some real hard numbers to look at, and so we can start the process of weighing whether we can reach our goal of $1.2 million. And also, it will be, is my understanding, it's going to be bid out in a fashion to where, as I use the shopping cart theory, we'll be able to pick and choose the pieces that we want and the level of finishes that we want. At least that's my understanding. And with that happening, we will have total control over how much money we spend and how much and how the elements all come together. Granted, we've got somebody has put out a $400,000 number for a lighting package as an allowance. I feel that's a little high, but we're actually going to have hard numbers coming in. And Paul, when will those numbers be ready for us?
As for the hard construction bids from construction contractors?
The estimate from Landmark.
I believe in their contract they will be providing estimates at either the 45, the first one might be at the 45% phase.
Okay. By then we'll have a true grip on the cost of this project and the scope that we'll be able to afford. Thank you.
Councilman Hanson.
I just wanted to clarify something Cecil said. The bare bones minimum $1 million wasn't to fix what we've got. I believe it was to replace what we've got. Isn't that correct?
Well, it would, Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilman Hanson, it would replace the electrical, replace the irrigation. It would basically remove and replace in kind the existing
So
fountains.
it's not repairing what
It's
we've
not
got.
just patching.
It's replacing it. Right. I just wanted to clarify
Correct.
that because there's a difference there.
Madam Mayor, respectfully to your point, I was just trying to show that it's going to be a substantial fix, whether we do the full package or just the bare bone minimum. I apologize if I alluded to that it was repairing. It is in fact replacing, but doing the necessities. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Anyone else have any questions for Paul? If not, can I get a motion?
Well, one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I brought this up before, with regard to the trees, of which I'm a big fan, and landscaping is very important to me on any project. What is the trade-off for every one tree that, whether it's one or three trees, whatever tree needs to be removed, how many trees are we potentially replacing?
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilman Yates, the direction is to save as many large trees as possible. The last concept you saw, their estimate had approximately 100 24-inch box trees. You can, cut that in half if you use the 30 larger trees. Again, landmark design will have to look at it. They're going to revise the concept, and then with, cost, they'll look at how many trees, so.
Madam Mayor, but at the end of the day, are we going to wind up with less trees than what we have now?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Councilman Hanson?
Well, there won't be less trees, they'll just be a lot shorter. But for the sake of time, I won't repeat everything I said at earlier meetings, but I would like to say that I do agree with the speakers that we had here tonight. I know there are a number of other people that would have been here, but as was mentioned, they are out of town. One in particular shared with me that he went down to the median during one of the farmers markets and stopped and spoke to each one of the vendors that were down there and asked if they knew what was going on, the future plans to take out quite a few of the trees, the tall trees. And he said that every one of the vendors said, what are they thinking? Because they appreciate the shade. I just want to reiterate, I'm sorry that we didn't do more to work around what is currently on the median. And as Mike said, I am concerned about the impact that this will have on any future bond election. Even if it's only $1 million, that would have gone a long way to help improve the streets in the downtown area. Thanks.
Anyone else? Vice Mayor Lejay?
Thank you. I think it's important when we talk about the street, and we talk about the intersection, that originally this project was at about $2 million. Council worked very diligently to set different parameters, and we'll look at the construction costs, and we may even pull it back more. Any savings that we have, I've advocated several times that money from the downtown fund should actually be used between El Lago and Palisades to do road improvements in the downtown area with downtown money and possibly reduce the overall cost of the bond. So it's very possible that we could in fact have additional dollars in downtown funds as well as capital improvement funds to begin looking at reducing the bond. That has always been my position, and I will strongly advocate for that when we have our work study session. With respect to the trees, respectfully, I respect the trees. I think the trees are awesome. I drove down the avenue coming over here. The Christmas display is amazing. My family enjoys it. Every family I've talked to enjoys it. It's my understanding that our designers that will be engaging in our concept plan will be working around as many trees as possible. The previous concept plan did not do that, and I've advocated for that all along. Save as many trees as you can, work around as many trees as you can, particularly the large trees. So if in fact we approve this, let's come back and take a look, everyone in this room, at the concept plan to see if in fact we have preserved the trees and we have minimized the cost. and we have reduced the scope of the project, and we have saved a significant amount of money that can be used to reduce the cost of the bond. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. And apropos people who may or may not be here, when we did discuss this before, we had members from the arts and the Civic Association and the Greening people here too. So just to know that we have heard from both sides, that you know that we're hearing a lot from other members of the community too that aren't here either.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor?
Councilman Yates, or, no?
I thought you were referring to me.
Who's first?
No. Thank you, if I may, Mayor.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'm very sensitive, as Vice Mayor Leger said, to the trees. We want to keep as many of the trees down there as we can, and I certainly appreciate the folks that have come out here and spoken this evening about this. They're very passionate about it, and I love the downtown area as well, and that's why I personally would like to see some improvements to it. Shortly after I was elected 2 years ago, I made a task of mine to go down and talk to all the businesses in the downtown areas. It's at least one of the projects that I did, and many of the business owners who had been down there for many, many years talked about what would you like to see, and of course, one of the first things in their mind is their business and the success of the business and the downtown area as well. And one of the business owners that I spoke to said, I've been down here 15 years, and as far as improvements in the downtown area, I'll believe it when I see it. And this is something that's been discussed before previous councils in the past, and I think it's time to take some action on this. And so many times in the past, we've heard this from years past, that we're waiting for the south side of the avenue to get developed so that we can do the improvements in the downtown area. And I think it's time that we stop waiting for a developer to save our downtown or to help improve upon our downtown. We can't wait for that to happen, for that investment. We need to improve upon what we do have control over to make it attractive for those businesses that are there now, perhaps for those businesses that might like to relocate there as well, and to make it something that's very attractive for our residents. And I look forward to many, many more years of Christmas lights and other events in the downtown area like this.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Yates?
I think the designers are here. I'd kind of like to hear their take on the tree situation, or both, because I know the landscape designer's here and the lead. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, my name is Wade Felton, Landmark Design Architects, Principal, 2318 South McClintock Drive, Tempe, Arizona. We were retained by the town to create a cost estimate for professional services for the median project. I was very happy, very excited to get involved in this project. It's something I'm taking very personally. I was a 10-year resident of Fountain Hills, former member of the Architectural Control Committee out here for several years as well. I also ride out here on my bicycle quite often, a couple times a month, and I agree Saguaro needs to have some improvements, especially in the bike lane, if we can get that. With regard to public comment from the citizens, we wholeheartedly agree and support their recommendations. Our efforts are going to be to retain every mature tree that we possibly can. Right now, we've walked the site twice, spent about probably 4 hours out there looking at every tree, every shrub, every existing element within the median, and we find that probably, with the exception of trees number 6, or is it 4? 6 and 4? There's one Aleppo pine and one eucalyptus that are probably very distressed and will need to be removed. The remainder of those trees, we're going to make every effort to retain all of the mature trees. In addition, we may recommend taking out the ornamental orange trees that we have in there. They're kind of out of character, and I think we can do a little better job with creating some more mature trees in those locations that are more decorative in nature. There are several areas that are going to need supplemental irrigation for. If you've noticed, if you've walked the site at all, many of the pines have severe surface roots that are creating problems with the trail that runs down through the center of the median. We're going to make an effort to supplement the irrigation of those trees with a deeper underground system.
We're also going to try to strengthen, our intent overall is to strengthen and enhance the viability and the overall usability of the median. We're working with the adjoining property owner to the south, San Gambo Corda, who owns the undeveloped property on the south side of Avenue of the Fountains, in an effort to work with him in coordinating his efforts in trying to develop his property. I've worked with Sam on several projects in Fountain Hills and have a really good working relationship with him. He's excited about the project and hopes that we can pull off a really great enhancement, which I think we will. In terms of just overall scope, what we're hoping to do is to come in, strengthen the usability on a year-to-year basis rather than just on occasion. I do compliment the town on the Christmas display. It's beautiful. I'd like to see us capitalize on that type of interaction with residents on a more frequent basis, not only the farmers market and the arts fair, but doing other special events, inviting more residents to come down and linger within the median area. We want to create a stronger path throughout the median, and we want to create a stronger linkage to the Fountain Park area as well. We're going to attempt to do that by bringing in certain architectural and hardscape elements which will tie in visually with what has been created around the park area over near the playground and some of the areas immediately adjoining the retail plaza. We're also going to try to, in terms of addressing grading, it is not our intent to go in and flatten the entire area within the median. We're going to try to retain as many of those berms as possible. We're going to incorporate in recessed seating and using retaining walls with some areas where people can sit and linger in those areas as well. So I think we're on the same page with what the citizens are seeking with regard to their overall feelings about the median, and hope to accomplish as many of those goals as possible. With that,
Well, it certainly sounds like you've been listening to what everybody says, and it seems you're coming up with a really good compromise that is going to satisfy. Everybody loves the trees, but of course we do want a gathering place. We want places with benches and lighting so that people will come down to the avenue not only at Christmas time when we have the lights, but a lot more often. So I'm very pleased that you're willing to work and with the citizens' ideas as to what they want. And it sounds like you're incorporating all of that into your design. Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Wade, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate you bringing up the fact that you're working with Sam on possibly tying some landscaping together downtown and bringing community to the south side as well as the center median. And if Sam's truly excited about this project, would you tell him donations are in order?
I will do that.
Thank you.
Any other council discussion? Can you get a motion?
No, Your Honor.
Mayor, I move to accept or make the motion to accept the proposal as listed.
In a second?
Second.
Any other speakers, sorry.
Mayor, we might want to
Any
get...
other?
I'll be a little more specific. Consideration of accepting the professional services agreement C 2013-118 with Landmark Design LLC for Avenue of the Fountains Improvements Project in the amount of $141,940 and authorized funding from the Downtown Fund.
And is that the one you would second, Councilman Brown?
Second.
All right. And discussion?
Just one more thing.
Councilwoman Hanson.
And I just want to clarify that my vote has nothing to do with Landmark, and what you are saying sounds really great, and the way you're working around things. It's just more the way I feel about where this came out on our part, what I thought our priority list was. And so that's, I just want to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second, and I think we'll call for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Yates?
Aye.
Councilmember Dickey?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanson?
Nay?
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Elke?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Lejay? And Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Mayor 6-1.
Thank you for your support. Look forward to seeing you in about a month.
Thank you.
It's a great concept.
Working with you.
Thank you.
Move on to our next agenda item, consideration of professional services agreement, C213-117 with, okay, we'll just wait a second. We could move the discussion outside. Great. Arrington Watkins Architects LLC for the Fire Station Number 1 renovations in the amount of $87,707. Jen? Could I ask everyone who wants to discuss the issue to move out into the lobby, please? Thank you.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, the Development Services Director has a report regarding the Fire Station Number 1 renovations, architect's agreement and project.
Mayor, members of the council, Fire Station Number 1 renovation is included in the FY 2012-13 budget and capital improvement program. On July 25th, 2012, the town advertised a request for qualifications from architects for the Fire Station Number 1 renovations. A mandatory pre-submittal meeting was held on August 7th. Statement of qualifications were received from 10 firms on August 15th, and based on the scoring criteria provided in the request for qualifications, Arrington Watkins was unanimously selected. The Fire Station Number 1 renovation will consist of new living quarters, approximately 1,450 square feet, renovation of existing living quarters for the EMS personnel. The EMS personnel were living in a trailer on site that was in very poor condition. The EMS staff has moved down to Fire Station Number 2. This project will do an asbestos survey of that trailer, demolish it, and then we'll have renovations inside the fire station for their living quarters. We'll also be doing a bathroom remodel to meet ADA requirements, demolition and removal of the trailer, as said before. The town's fueling facility is not currently hooked up to the emergency generator, so we're going to hook that up. And then we're also going to do some site improvements along Palisades to reconfigure the entrance into the upper level of the fire station. The professional services agreement includes approximately $59,000 for design, $2,000 for surveying, $2,000 for the asbestos survey, $3,000 for reimbursables, which includes printing costs and mileage to project meetings, and about $21,000 for the architects and their subconsultants and services during construction. The original scope and fee that was proposed was well in excess of $100,000. We worked with the architects, we reduced the scope. Town staff will be doing most of the inspections. They'll be doing special inspections, and staff is recommending approval of the contract and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Paul? Councilman Brown?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. Paul, how many responded to the RFP? How many? 10. And the grading, and what was the spread in the proposals as far as dollar-wise?
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Brown, we are not allowed by state law to request pricing.
Oh, that's right. It's all false. That's right. So, and of course, I'm glad to hear that you did do an RFQ. I was not aware of that. I did not see that. It changes the comments that I had written down earlier. It certainly does look like it is expensive to do a $405,000 was the proposed amount on May 8th. You proposed a $495,000 budget, $70,000 for design, $405,000 for total construction. I believe those are the numbers that were in that work study session. And I was a little surprised to see that we missed it 24% and it went up and not back and not down. So one day I would like to review that RFQ with you and have you explain to me how this all took place so I'm comfortable with spending the money. And I am hugely ready to build this for the firemen and the ambulance drivers. I've worked with the chief on he has had some of his firemen draw up some plans, and I thought they were pretty good, and they were free. But all in all, I'm going to propose that we move this forward.
Any
Oh.
other?
I can answer your question really quick, Mayor Kevin, Councilmember Brown. The budget for the project, I believe, was $75,000 and roughly $400,000 for construction. I inherited that budget. When I looked at it, I don't believe they, in our previous CIPs, included the design services that you need during construction in their budget. The total budget for the project is $495,000. Right now, we have about 90, and we're telling them to design to about a $350,000 construction budget. So we're about $50,000 right now under the projected project budget.
That's good information. Thank you, Paul.
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Yates?
Likewise, I didn't go through some of the fine print, but that one jumps up on me about contract phase and post-construction, and you offered that we're going to be doing a lot of the inspections internally. Is this a not-to-exceed number? Not that I have anything against these guys at all. Very reputable. Their qualifications are tremendous. But out of a $87,000 bid to have $21,000 for contract administration, I was just hoping we could either write it up as a not-to-exceed and/or shave some off by doing some internal inspections.
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Yates, right now the contract is like time and materials on their hours and what they do. The items during construction, if you actually go through it, a lot of it is their time to come out for meetings and walk the site, and every month the contractor is going to submit a pay application. So the architect is actually going to have to look at that pay application and see if the amount of work done corresponds with the amount of money they're requesting. They'll have to take the red line as-built from the contractor every month and put it onto their drawing, so we have hopefully correct as-built at the end of the project. So their inspection type services are minimal unless there's special inspections that we can't handle ourselves. So the only way it would really go over is if we find something or scope something different that the town asks them to do above and beyond what's in this contract.
Madam Mayor, what I'm really asking is, can we get that lower? Or is that's the number? Because private sector, to have an architect do a draw request inspection is substantially less than that.
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Yates, this is the typical public process. Going into this, that we came to an agreement that this was their lowest bottom line price. If it's not acceptable to the council and they don't want to move forward, I would then have to go talk to the number 2 architect on the list.
Yeah. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Lezay?
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at the budget, which I have in front of me, I think it's kind of a good starting and ending place. This council approved $495,000 for this project. This council approved $75,000 for design, and I was a little concerned that the design was over by $12,000, but then I noticed that it goes beyond design and it's project management that's involved in that. You have $420,000 for construction. I'm sure that Chief and the whole group will be mindful of bringing this project in under budget, and our total budget is $495,000. So I have the same concerns that y'all have, and once again, I think this is going to come in well within budget, and certainly under budget. Thank you.
Councilwoman Dickey?
May I have a motion, please? I move to consideration of professional services agreement C 2013-117 with Arrington Watkins Architects LLC for the Fire Station number 1 renovations in the amount of $87,707.
Second. Any speaker cards? Any other council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor 7-0. Thank you. The next 2 items, 13 and 14, we'll have one report First, consideration of Resolution 2012-32, declaring as a public record that certain documents filed with the town clerk and entitled the December 20th, 2012 Amendments to Chapter 2 of the Town Code. Ken, did you want to start?
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, the town clerk, town attorney, be happy to respond to any of the questions you've had. It was pretty clear in what was being discussed in the work session. If you have any further questions, we'd be happy to discuss them with you.
Any further questions? Can I get a motion?
I've got one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If I may.
Didn't see it. Go right ahead.
So as I read through this, what are we actually approving? Are we approving that we're going to use the mayor's count or the total vote count? The total vote count.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Brown, the version that's drafted in front of you is the same one that you had in the work session that has the alternative language for the mayor's count. And so if it's not the desire of the council to have that alternative chosen, the motion will need to include striking that in the two sections as it appears.
Any other discussion?
Oh.
Question?
Mayor, if I may, I'm not sure, Councilman Brown, will you finish?
It was. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor. I had an opportunity to review the changes, and I appreciate the work the town council and our town clerk has put into it. I'm kind of stepping back, and my first thoughts are that I'm strongly in favor of supporting the League of Cities position to try to repeal the consolidated elections legislation to begin with, which has mandated that we move our elections on the dates to consolidate the elections. In that we are required to do this based on legislation, I believe we need a safety net, so I think it's extremely prudent that we have put this policy together. Hopefully we won't have to use this code. I know some people say it's doubtful that the league will be successful at this, others are hopeful. So I just want to go on record saying that I really support the league's efforts to move forward and repeal this. That being said, the legislation basically requires us to do certain things. It requires us to move the date, and we'll do that, and we'll live with that. But it didn't require us to change a policy that we've had in place for a number of years. I will be supporting this, as I stated earlier, as a safety net, but I really think the only thing that I would be in favor of changing would be simply the date, because our policy itself has worked very well for us over the years. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. So, Andrew, would you say that whoever makes the motion would do so deleting section 232B?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Dickey, and its counterpart. It appears in two places in essentially the same way, in the referendum section and the regular election section. So just deleting the alternate for counting the total ballots cast will be enough for the clerk and I to know what changes to make.
Councilman Elke?
Thank you. Andrew, question, what's proposed here by staff is the change and to making sure that everything's clear is to delete the alternate language would be to stay as close to the system that we have currently in place. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Elke, that's correct.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I would be in favor of us maintaining the status quo to the best extent that we can and maintaining as far as the way the calculations are made. If we can stay as close to what this town has had since its inception, I would be more in favor of that.
Anyone else? Councilman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. Is this going to be two different votes, one for the resolution and one for the ordinance?
That's correct. The first one declares it as a public record, and that's where we'll need the amended motion to change. Well, actually, let's do it as part of the ordinance. It'll probably be cleaner that way. Declaring it as a public record, the ordinance will adopt it as a public record with that one change.
Is everyone really clear that we need a little more of an I think we need a little more of an explanation.
Madam Mayor, members of the council,
especially for our members who haven't done this a lot. We have, under Arizona law, there is a requirement that every ordinance you pass is published in full in the newspaper. There is a carve-out of that law that allows you to adopt by reference large documents. For instance, the building code. If you were to go and publish the 300 and some pages of any of our codes in the newspaper, you wouldn't have a town budget. We would be done. The paper would be very happy, but we would have nothing left to spend. So the state legislatures recognize that that's the case. When we have very large code amendments like this one that addresses an entire chapter of the code, we call that out as a public record in and of itself and adopt it by reference for the same reason. That budgetarily, when the town is undergoing major code changes that aren't necessarily serious policy changes, but they affect a lot of sections of the code, that we adopt it by reference as well. So anything over about 6 or 7 pages, you're going to see adopted by reference. So whenever we're doing large amendments, you're going to see this process. It requires you first to declare it as public record. That's what the resolution does. And adopting that resolution or that public record by reference is what the ordinance does. So the ordinance is the actual enacting provision. The public document you declare is chapter 2. So it's a bit of a roundabout way to ensure that the town doesn't spend an inordinate amount of money advertising these things, particularly when most people who want to read the full text of it now are going to click on the website and get the full text, even prior to me.
But if the council was more in favor of the 50+1 rather than going with the mayor's, that would be in the second part, that would be changed?
Yes, with the motion to approve the ordinance that adopts it by reference should include that change.
Okay. Any other, you want to? Go ahead, take a stab at it.
Manager, the motion to strike the counterpart in the ordinance, you need to make in the resolution as well, the section 232, is that correct?
It's probably cleaner just in the ordinance itself.
Okay. Mayor, I move to pass resolution 2012-32 declaring as a public record that certain document filed with the town clerk and entitled December 20th, 2012 amendments to chapter 2 of the town code.
Second.
Any speaker cards? No. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor, 7-0. All right, and
Mayor?
go right ahead.
Thank you.
Want to stab the next one?
Thank you. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 12-08, amending the Town of Fountain Hills Town Code, Chapter 2, relating to the conduct of mayor, council, and elections, in striking section 2-3-2 as it relates to the tabulation of counts based on the votes cast for mayor.
Second.
And its counterpart.
Okay. And a second, any speaker cards? No. Any other council discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
All right, we go on to number 15, consideration of resolution 2012-36, adopting the Town of Fountain Hills Senate Bill 1598 compliance policy process summary. Ken?
Mr. Kavanaugh, members of the council, deputy town manager has a report, and to be consistent with what was discussed in the work study regarding the requirements of Senate Bill 1598.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The resolution that you have before you is the culmination of several months of drafting a policy to comply with Senate Bill 1598, otherwise known as the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, that was approved by the state legislature in July of 2011. The bill applies to all cities and towns and grants a series of rights to regulated private parties in their dealings with cities and other agencies. The bill requires that cities and towns process permit applications within a published time frame. Permits include building-related permits as well as licenses. In developing the time frame, staff was aware that the permitting process does not suit a one-size-fits-all time frame. However, the bill requires that the town establish one time frame for the permitting process. The time frames proposed in the compliance policy are designed to be flexible for the taxpayer, but are not intended to change the way we do business now. We remain committed to providing the best level of service to our customers while at the same time complying with the law. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Julie? Any speaker cards? No, Mayor. No, and no other discussion, then can I get a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 2012-36, adopting the Town of Fountain Hills Senate Bill 1598 Compliance Policy Process Summary.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Mayor's report. So on to number 16, discussion with possible directions to staff relating to the Governor's Transaction Privilege Tax Simplification Task Force's recommendation. Okay.
Mayor Callen, members of the council, this was requested to be placed on the agenda from our discussion at our last council work study session. It was regarding the executive order established the Transaction Privilege Tax Simplification Task Force. That was to study basically the sales tax and how it's structured in Arizona. The task force met a number of times over the year, and they've come up with some recommendations. And there's some significant issues that have what we feel, at least the staff, has some adverse effects on us. And considering, in particular, the most out of the three that are there is the construction sales tax and its point of sale issues. And it's going to, unfortunately, there's going to be some winners and losers in that. And the larger communities are going to win that have those point of sales, and the smaller communities like ourselves are going to have considerable adverse effects. So I'd be happy to, I think the documents that the staff sent out to you subsequent to the work session on the legislative sessions on that, we'd be happy to discuss any other items on that and wait for any direction you'd like to give us on what we should be doing with this.
You want to start? Councilman Elton?
Oh, go ahead. Click on the draw here. I just wanted to make a motion, and we can still have discussion.
Yes.
Okay, very good. I move that we support the town auditor's recommendations.
And now discussion?
Mayor, we have to have this put back on as far as an agenda item because of the dire consequences that the town could face. I mean, some of the numbers that we've seen could range about $500,000 a year in potential lost revenues as far as the town's concerned. There's a range there. I think they can correct me if I'm wrong. It's $200,000 to I think it was upwards of $600,000 or somewhere in that ballpark. Julie probably did it. Yeah, Julie.
Mayor, members of the council, the construction sales tax has been significant. Not lately. Lately, it has been down $600,000 for last fiscal year, but in 2008, it was $2 million. And so it, with the economy as slow as it is, the lowest we're getting is around $500,000 or $600,000. But again, it has been up around $2 million, over $1 million a year.
And Mayor, with the budget that we have, taking that much of a hit, I mean, this is a state of emergency, I think, as far as our town is concerned, and the potential ramifications that this could result in as far as our budget for the foreseeable future, especially considering the fact that we rely so heavily on sales tax. And I think that this council needs to take some strong action and to be in touch, of course, with our representatives at the legislative level, but even beyond writing a stern letter, I would propose, Mayor, that we get either at this meeting or perhaps our next meeting, take a vote in opposing, as a town, the change in the transaction privilege tax to a point of sale, because I just don't know how much, not a lot that we can do as a town. I understand we're limited to some extent, but I think we need to be doing everything that we can and not just sitting by and watching it happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is certainly going to be pretty devastating for us if this goes through. And I think, obviously, big cities like Phoenix and just about anybody who's got a Home Depot is going to be pretty happy if this goes through. And with us having the Elman property still to develop at Yarrow Canyon, we'd be losing out on an awful lot of money. So I certainly agree that we need to oppose this very strongly. And as the state representative was here last time, John said that, looking at the final bill, if it came out like this, he certainly would be opposing anything that would be detrimental to Fountain Hills like this. I think you wanted to,
Please.
Councilman Brown.
And also, State Representative Kavanaugh highly recommended that we not just say that we oppose this, but he would like some definite solutions to the problem. And of course, being a general contractor, I would love to see it go away. But putting all that to the side, it would be so detrimental to our town that I would really like to see it stay in place as is, or work out a sales tax on the resident sales at the end of the home, opposed to, as we pay every month into the sales tax, put a percentage on the home and tax the in sale price opposed to the construction price. Anything besides taking it completely away from us. I think another good point is that we have based our budget around the transaction privilege tax on construction for, Andrew, help me, how many years has this been around? I mean, not forever, but for certainly the 15 years I've been here, we've paid transaction privilege tax. And if they are going to do this, they need to give us at least a 5-year notice, I would think, before they just absolutely drop the hammer. It's something that I would certainly hate to see happen overnight, which it could, just as the general contractors got their way with the development fees and ran back down our throat. I see very possibly them doing the same thing. They're a powerful organization. And that I think at any cost we really need to put our heads together and come up with 5 good reasons as why we shouldn't change the tax law in the state of Arizona. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Lejay?
Thank you, Mayor. My motion was somewhat broad, and in response to Councilman Alkey's comment, what the motion is to support the town auditor's recommendations, and in the reports that we have from the auditor, by so doing specifically, we are opposing the elimination of construction sales tax to be replaced by retail sales tax at the point of sale for construction materials. So in essence, by approving his recommendations, we are in fact voting on our opposition to the change in the law. And there's a couple other things in there. And in response to Councilman Brown's comments, I've had an opportunity to look over Albert Holler's report, and he does, Councilman Brown, in fact, mention a number of rationales for actually each thing that the report opposes. So I think we can draw from that as well as other areas. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Dickey?
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate that this was on so quickly, again, because I think when Representative Kavanaugh was here, I get the feeling that he's already being told that the league was not necessarily against this, and again, it could look like cities are against each other, but as we can see, not only do we have the recommendations from the tax auditor, but we have this unambiguously, strongly opposed statement from the league about these. My question is, are we going to oppose all three of those, or are we honing down on the one? I'm fine with all three, but just wanted to know what you were thinking.
My motion, Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
The motion included supporting the town auditor's recommendation, and he is in favor of 7 of the 10 recommendations, and he's opposing 3 of them, which are specified in his report.
Councilman Alkey?
Mayor, I think, again, besides a letter or resolution of this council, that we should direct staff to take the steps to have our state senator, Michelle Reagan, out here, our other state representative, and also extend an invitation to the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, so that they can come out here and they can hear from us directly, face to face, because I really don't think that a strongly worded letter or a resolution by this council, it's a piece of paper. And I think being invited out here January or February, if possible, depending on what our agenda permits, but the sooner the better before anything happens, so that we have them out here so we can tell them, hey, what the impact that this is going to have on our town. I think that would carry the most weight. I don't think certainly emails and phone calls from our residents would certainly be helpful to let them know what the town's position, the town's residents' position is, because it's ultimately going to affect the quality and the level of service that we're going to be able to provide to the town. So I think that would probably carry the most weight, and we would be able to speak to them directly and let them know what impact this is going to have.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We need to do everything we can to oppose this, and I do hope that League of Cities is going to be opposing it. As I said before, the only thing I worry about with League of Cities is that they're representing all the cities and towns in Arizona, and you've got a lot of these very large cities like Phoenix and Tucson, and who they seem to always get more of their way than the smaller ones do. They've got a bigger voice. So I'm sure there's a lot of other small cities and towns like us that we need maybe to join forces too with them to present a united front to just not be one voice, but a very loud voice if we've got a lot of other cities and towns along with us. Andrew, did you want to add something?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of the council, with the broad nature of the motion, Ken and I will take this as pretty much a direction for full court press on everything that's available to us, including inviting the town's local representatives to come to the council, but also to support efforts at the legislature to talk with other legislators about the effects. One of the things that I don't think anybody has a very good handle on right now is there's a presumption that the larger cities will gain, and they may gain at the expense of the smaller cities, but they may also lose on sales of materials coming in from out of state that aren't even purchased anywhere in the state at all. And so I don't think anybody has a good handle on the net gain and loss that the larger cities that have commercial purchasing centers would get. So they may suffer as well, or it may be offset. I don't think anyone really has gotten to that point yet, but it certainly is something they should be concerned about along with the rest of the cities.
Mm-hmm. And just to that point, I would further agree with Councilman Brown that we be very specific, directing to staff to be specific in what exactly our position is, why it is, and perhaps come up with those 5 main reasons why we oppose it, so that they can see clearly the harm that they're going to be doing to us if they enact it. Councilwoman Dickey?
Thanks, I just wanted to read the last line from the League, saying these recommendations represent a threat to the economic viability of cities and towns in Arizona. We can't afford to wait until session to engage our legislators. Basically, like I said, they are totally against it.
I hope they don't change their minds to do some kind of, there's a lot of lobbyists down there. And so we do have a motion. Did we have a second? You did. Okay. No speaker cards on this? No other council discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? 7-0. Okay. Do you have anything else, Ken?
Mayor Callen, members of the council, let's see, we got a piece of artwork in the community center. We've got a clock. Yeah, we think it's going to be in the median. We've got a project architect for the medians that we bring back, work with the subcommittee, and bring back a concept for the council to consider. By the end of January, we have an architect for the Fire Station 1. We also had advocacy against the TCT recommendations. We're ready to go.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, then before I call for an adjournment, just want to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, and enjoy. All right, and can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.